to our faithful 13 viewers, welcome to another exciting episode of Outwit Outlast, the podcast dedicated to all things Survivor 50 this season. I'm Geoff Schmidt, and this is the host, Amanda Schmidt, and we are super excited to talk about what was one half of a great episode of Survivor.
You said the host as if you're
You're the
not
host.
also a host.
Yeah, I'm like the co-pilot. The host goes down, I'll carry on. I'll land the podcast.
Yeah, you're just there to take over in case I have a heart attack.
Yeah, that's it. I won't call 911. The podcast must go on.
Yeah.
But wait, Amanda, I have some thoughts about Zac Brown. I don't have that many, actually.
No, I was right about to say, I think this was a great episode of Survivor with a really annoying 20-minute Zac Brown commercial right in the middle.
Lordy, lordy. I agree with you. It reminded me, actually, of old school Survivor where they would have promotional tie-ins, like the
Yeah,
cars or the food, even Outback, But like it was obviously a commercial tie-in.
yeah.
I strongly suspect that Zac Brown is about to release a new album and the CBS Synergy gods put this together.
Yeah, everyone was so excited about his new song that he was playing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I at least like that they kept in a clip where he muffed it. He clearly is still working out the kinks on his new song, or else forgot it. But part of it, like there was a chord change that he sort of fumbled,
Oh,
and I
that's
like
funny.
that. That was good.
Yeah. I think you're right that it's more like old Survivor than people are going to want to admit, though, because everybody is always like, ah, we miss old Survivor. But something that happened a lot on old Survivor that doesn't happen now as much is those like brand tie-ins. And also, they would go on these rewards where it was like half of the episode was them like experiencing this cultural experience in a particular country, and it in a lot of ways Survivor felt much more like sort of a nature show and a travel show.
Yeah.
And the bit where Zac Brown was going spearfishing with the most insane spear I have ever seen, man, they do not give them that spear
No,
on the actual Survivor. But it really did kind of feel like watching a sort of bad travel show that Zac Brown hosted.
I guess these moments I appreciate if they illuminate character in some way. And there might have been little snippets like Dee's uh, distraught response to this was, I guess, sort of illuminating. I certainly noted who they gave a confessional to and who they didn't, and
Yeah.
that was not super illuminating. Mostly, it just reinforced increasing my antipathy towards Coach, who all of the sudden pulled out this I'm from Tennessee, bring on the country star stuff. It was just shameless pandering. If they're trying to spin off a Zac Brown spearfishing show, I've seen it, and it wasn't that. The spear was something.
That was crazy.
Yeah, the sharks were big, but
I was much more transfixed by the Survivor talent show than I was by the Zac Brown thing. And I think you're right that we learned maybe a tiny bit about Dee, which was actually for me her attitude towards winning, which I think was also what I learned about Charlie from the talent show, which is that
yeah,
both of them are all or nothing people, which I think helps explain why Charlie is still so kind of scarred from his last season getting second. Like, Dee seems to think that second place does not matter. Like, getting immunity does not matter if you don't win. And Charlie was kidding about how upset he was that he lost
no,
the talent show, but a little bit he wasn't.
I know everybody knew he was not kidding enough.
Yeah, because they were laughing really hard at first, but then I feel like it trickled out a little bit as the bit continued and everybody realized Charlie might actually be a little mad that Rizzo beat him at the Survivor talent show.
Yeah, this is why I think Charlie's going home soon. Charlie cannot come to terms with his past, and he is still litigating an injustice that everybody else has moved on from except
Yeah.
him. And it's affecting his gameplay, it's affecting his interactions with other players. He's making a terrible mistake with Rizzo
I agree.
and everybody else in his tribe. I think everybody must sense something churning in him.
Yeah. And at first I thought that this would be more of a down the line kind of loss for Charlie because in a fight between Charlie and Rizzo, it seemed like Charlie should beat Rizzo because Rizzo is on a tribe alone, essentially, and Charlie has a clear majority. But now that Genevieve found her second boomerang idol and sent it over to Rizzo, I think things are a little more complicated. And no one
Yeah.
on this season has seen how diabolical Rizzo is with an idol, and unclear to me if that's a success that he can replicate, and unclear to me if he will try to use the idol the exact same way he did on his season. I think it's worth pointing out that Charlie was on the season of Survivor when everyone went home with an idol in their pocket.
Right.
And if Rizzo had been on season 46 of Survivor, almost definitely, I think, would have gone home with that idol in his pocket because the assumption was sort of that no one was going to play their idols if they had them.
Right.
So I think like we'll see how it works for him, and we'll see how it works for him that nobody knows what his idol play is. But I do think that that makes that a much more interesting dynamic.
Yeah. I hope Rizzo doesn't make the mistake that some contestants make of thinking that they've cracked the code and they'll just do the same thing again.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling that Rizzo is smarter than that and is going to play that idol if he needs to this time. It would be crazy to try to replicate that insane lucky streak that he had with the threatening the idol. Also of note, pre challenge, or I guess yeah, pre challenge was the rivalry between Genevieve and Aubry seems to be heating up in a very personal way.
Yeah.
And the edit kind of favored the Aubry narrative of it. You know, Genevieve did look um, a little scoldy or something. It's obvious that Aubrey's looking for an idol. Why do you think you caught her? You know, like I don't think
Yeah.
Aubrey's trying to hide it very much.
Yeah, that's true. But I'm not sure the edit is fully favoring Aubry, actually. The edit is much more generous with Aubry being kind of snide and mean than it is
Mhm.
with Genevieve. Like, Genevieve is coming across as pretty well intentioned. They get a lot of her saying sorry in the confessionals.
Yeah,
Whereas Aubry, we're seeing all of her making mean faces at Genevieve. We're seeing all of her mocking Genevieve. And it's possible that
yeah.
that's just a difference in their personalities, and that's
Well,
why we're
yeah.
seeing it. But I do think that, like, watching these sequences, I'm a little more on Genevieve's side because she's being thoughtful and she's only targeting Aubry because Aubry was targeting her first. Or at least
Yeah.
that's the way it was presented in the edit. I do think that Genevieve's plan to blindside Rizzo and get the idol back from the boomerang without anyone knowing that she was the one who gave it to him is complicated by the fact that Rizzo will almost definitely tell everyone he knows that he has the idol. I think that that's something
Yes.
Genevieve didn't know about him, and
Right.
that's something that is going to mess with her plan a little bit because everybody's going to know someone gave him that idol.
Excellent point. Yeah, yeah, you nailed it. Well, what did you think about the challenge?
I thought this was the worst possible challenge they could have had post voting out the one really strong guy on their tribe because I am such a strong believer that physical strength does not matter that much in today's tribe immunity challenges. Like, so much more important are the puzzles and the like clutch position of like shooting something into a basket. Like, it's so rare that the challenge gets decided in the early phases where there's some amount of lifting things or pushing things. But this challenge was like 100% pushing things because I think celebration is actually a really easy word to solve.
Yeah,
And I think that arch thing is hard, but
yeah,
I don't think it's like hours could potentially pass doing this hard. Like, I think that
Right.
they figure it out and get a rhythm and can do it. And I
Yeah.
think that the hardest part of this challenge was actually by far pushing that incredibly heavy thing. And they just did not have the
Yeah.
muscle to do that. So that was really hard to watch. And it
Yeah.
was really hard to watch them. That last shot where they were supposed to be pushing this big sled full of heavy stuff under a net, and someone said it was like pushing it through a birthing canal. And we just see all of them crawling out from under the net after they're lost, like drenched in sweat. It was a very visceral depiction of humiliation and loss.
Born into humiliation.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I agree. It was the worst possible challenge to hit that group of people. I think I would always favor the team that kept a little bit of a balance of all three of those things: the clutch, the strength, and the brain. I don't know. They were sort of hoisted on their own petard. They should have known better, and they should have known better than to listen to Mike White. So who, whatever his agenda was with that vote, well, he hoisted his own petard, maybe this episode.
A little bit, because I think he was underestimating the value of Q as a shield. Like, I think that everybody knows that as long as Q is around, it's going to be hard to focus on voting anyone else out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, let's get to it, the real episode, because the Zac Brown stuff was annoying me so much. I don't know. I'm not a Zac Brown fan, clearly. I like his voice, but I don't sit around listening to his stuff.
No, and I don't tune into Survivor to listen to. I mean, we saw him sing two full songs, didn't we? Like, that's not why I'm watching Survivor.
Maybe, yeah. Um,
It felt like a million full songs.
just wait until Mr. Beast shows up.
I'm I'm gonna be livid every single second. And based on this, it sounds like Mr. Beast might be on the show for a full 30 minutes, and I am going to be livid for that full 30 minutes. I'm gonna be that clip of Liz shouting about Applebee's.
What do you think of the archival clips that they're pulling?
I can't decide. Having these like full breaks to go into these past clips is interesting. I think that I mean, honestly, as a viewer who has seen all of these seasons, when Charlie says, I'm like Liz, I'm pissed, I don't need you to show me that clip of Liz. Like, it lives in the back of my head. But I think if I hadn't seen the show, that would be really helpful. So I wonder if part of it is trying to bring in context and get people excited about old seasons who actually haven't seen all of them. I also think I definitely don't hate it. Like I think it's kind of fun to be reminded of these old seasons, especially the much older ones. I don't know, what do you think?
I appreciate it, and I kind of sometimes wish they would do a little more of it. If the not a lot more, because that'll get too self-congratulatory, sort of.
Yeah.
But um, I guess I hadn't thought about it until you said that. But I wonder who the audience for those clips is. Maybe they're trying to recruit new a new audience for the next 50 seasons, suggesting a rich history that you can delve into, and the more you watch, the more you get hooked. I
Yeah.
think if you watch the right seasons, and CBS was very careful to put up some very interesting episodes for all of those a lot of those players, as long as the context is good. Like, I really would love it if they would contrast the play of somebody this season with their former season. It but it surprised me that Colby still has feelings about Coach beating him so long ago in that
I
contest,
know.
and it was, it was irksome to him then, and me too. I couldn't, but it's still with him. I was surprised by that.
Yeah, I almost wonder if integrating the footage from old seasons a little more is what I'm sort of craving,
Yeah,
because most of this footage has been set up where a cast member pretty much describes exactly the clip and then we see.
yeah,
the clip and then they continue talking about it. I think you're right that seeing it in a way that a little more smoothly contrasts the way that a player is playing now and the way that they were on a past season would be really interesting.
Like the Christian Gabby flashbacks were
Yeah.
super good this time. They gave the
Yeah.
necessary context to every, they were very germane. I really appreciated the edit of all of that stuff, and
Yeah.
Christian crying, sort of grieving. I didn't think he was grieving what she did. I think he was grieving what he did, because he got her voted out because of that.
I mean,
Or both.
she got herself voted out. I think that it's probably a really complicated set of emotions that he
Right.
has cuz he said like, and he's right. I think I completely understand and think she was justified in deciding to blindside me
Yeah.
because for anyone who doesn't know, Gabby got voted out of Survivor because she tried to blindside Christian, but
Right.
he clocked it and played an idol to save himself, and she was consequently voted out
Yeah.
because she was kind of the backup plan to her own plan to vote Christian out.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much guilt he feels over her then being the one to go home that night, but I do think probably, even though he knows that she was totally justified in what she did, like I think she felt so overshadowed by him, and everyone else on that season was so in love with him and was so impressed by him, and they were totally dismissing her. And
Yeah.
like as a woman who has been in a scenario where you're like working with a smart man, but both of you are really smart and both of you are contributing a lot, and everybody just loves this smart man and wants him to be the one of the brochachos and like wants him there all the time, and they like barely even see you. That is such a frustrating feeling. And so I think when Christian's saying I understand why she did that, I think she was justified in that because she really wanted to get him out because she wanted people to notice her,
Yeah.
like in a way that makes sense in Survivor. Like she wanted credit for all the moves they were making. And I think that was all really smart and justified. But I think just because it was all smart and justified doesn't mean it wasn't still hurtful to him because
Yeah.
he never would have tried to blindside her. So I think a little bit him crying was kind of like this complicated confluence of like, I know why she did that, but I still feel hurt by it. Like you can understand someone and think they did the thing that makes sense for them, but still be hurt by what they did.
Maybe that's it. Maybe also, don't you think Christian is a pretty perceptive, sensitive, empathetic person who knew what was happening to Gabby in that season,
Yeah.
and that he was sort of making it, not making it happen, but their dynamic was contributing to something that was really hurting her, and he knew it, and it was
Yeah.
based on gender stereotyping and a certain kind of sexism, and he was party to it when he didn't want to be, and then it just devolved into that you or me
Yeah.
situation, and it was her. I don't know. The thing that I think is really interesting about that is what Mike said to him is, "You're doing it again. You found another like nerdy, what I forget what he said, like this nerdy
Nerd
girl.
girl, something. Yeah.
She's just like Gabby. She's going to betray you again." But I think that's the, not only is that wrong, but it's the wrong, or maybe it's right actually, because I think she sort of has already tried to throw him under the bus, but it's a little less intentional, maybe, than Gabby. I thought Gabby's, everything you said about Gabby sounded so right to me, and it was the right thing for her to do. And it was a season where she was facing a lot of assumptions about her capabilities and intelligence, and she was right to try and break free. I really admired Christian this episode, and I admired the edit actually because they did put you in his thought process. They had tons of clips of him really thoughtfully listening at the tribal. Sometimes when Emily was saying things that made me say, "Oh, maybe I should send her home," sometimes the tension between him and Mike, this little cat and mouse, where Mike suddenly realizes that Christian knows what he's doing, was really intense. It was great. I don't know. I thought the whole thing was great.
I
And
agree.
I think every good plot needs its element of tragedy or friction, and leaving Ozzy out of the vote and having Ozzy being so upset about that. And you know, Ozzy, like, it's not going to go away. He's not going to say, oh, well, it's just a game. He's betrayed. He feels hurt. I feel like there would be repercussions for that that are,
Yeah.
you know, that was
Yeah,
a terrific element of that tribal.
I know that whole last 40 minutes of that episode was so good. And I think there's a lot to unpack in what you just said. I'm going to try to start at the beginning. I think Mike made a huge mistake, not just calling himself a con man at tribal council, but telling Christian not to redo his mistakes from David versus Goliath because it wasn't Gabby that got Christian voted out of David versus Goliath. It was Mike White. And it was
Yeah.
trusting Mike White and listening to the stories that Mike White was trying to sell him. So, of course, Christian is smart enough to realize when Mike White is trying to sell Christian on not making the same mistakes, that Christian's going to think, like, at first he's going to relive all that hurt from Gabby, and we see that, and I thought it was edited really well. And then he's going to say, okay, but the biggest mistake that I made was trusting Mike White for too long. And he went through that exact process. And I remember sitting there watching Mike White in the water telling this to Christian and thinking, Mike is the one that you should be wary of, not Emily. And it was so rewarding to see him finally come to that conclusion. And then you're right, this complication with Ozzy really drew out the tension in a way that like made it still sort of high stakes on multiple levels because Emily seemed like she made a huge mistake by trying to tell Ozzy the plan to vote out Mike White, but I actually think that that was maybe a calculated risk for Emily that was worth making because I think Ozzy's pretty important to Emily's game strategy because he's someone who she is closer to than Christian. So as much as she can keep Ozzy around and keep him trusting her, the more that she can start to create a position for herself in this game that doesn't just rely on Christian, so that she has stuff to say like, this is how I stayed in this game independent of Christian. And I think
Yeah.
that's really important for her. So I get why she wanted to do that. I also get why Christian didn't want to tell Ozzy the plan because, and this was a big revelation for me when Christian said it, I was trying so hard this whole episode to figure out why Ozzy was so obsessed with becoming Mike White's number one
I
because
know.
it felt like it came out of left field. He was like, I have to get Angelina off of him so that I can be his number one and he has to work with me. And I couldn't figure out why he cared that much. And then Christian said, we can't tell Ozzy because Ozzy wants a White Lotus cameo. And I was like, oh, of
Yeah.
course. That's why he wants to get rid of the one person on the island who has had a Mike White cameo so that he can be Mike White's number one.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And it kind of all clicked into place for me.
Yeah. It's sort of sad to, but it makes sense. Otherwise, I couldn't figure out the logic of, do you really think that you voting out this person's number one is going to make them want to work with you and trust and respect you? No, and Mike White isn't alone on the tribe. Ozzy's justifications for this thing that he got dug into are just sort of a little bit driven by ego and vanity, and that made me feel a little sad for Ozzy.
Yeah. And
But
maybe there was a lot more to it. And I do think that Ozzy is trying to build relationships with a lot of different people on this season who are unrelated, and that's smart. So
yeah,
maybe it was more just about having Suri on this side, Mike White on this side, Ozzy sort of in the middle. But I can't help but think that the White Lotus had something to do with it.
yeah, people have talked around that a little bit, and how much it did affect the way that they interacted with him. I think.
I think
You know.
so.
Even more props to Christian for not letting that affect. I can't imagine that that would ever affect Christian's judgment, but
Yeah, because Christian is the least vain person out there, I think. Like, he's the least
well,
likely to want something so silly out of it. Although I will caveat that by saying that Christian was also on the White Lotus. Um, and it was a very different scenario than Angelina being on it. Like
Yeah,
he was just in the area, I
yeah,
think, randomly while they were filming it.
yeah.
And Mike White was like, "Yeah, come be an extra," and he didn't like get makeup or anything, and he was just in the background. But
Wasn't it he and his wife?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
maybe it's because he's not vain and he's not driven by ego like Ozzy is, or maybe it's just because he already had his White Lotus cameo and he doesn't need another one. I don't know.
But anyway, I found the whole sequence from the end of Zac Brown to the end of Tribal just almost a perfect
Yeah.
sequence of Survivor for me.
Yeah.
The characters were all really well drawn. The tension was clear. The narrative was crisp. It took turns. I wasn't crazy about Christian standing behind Ozzy and pantomiming to Emily. Like, talk about demonstrating that you don't trust somebody. That was
Yeah.
clear demonstration that he doesn't trust Emily.
But she did kind of invite it by saying, okay, I guess I won't tell Ozzy, and then explicitly in front of Christian telling Ozzy.
So
So,
let's revisit Emily for a minute. She does keep opening her mouth and saying the things that seem like mistakes to say, and then walking them back. It's not like she's doing it with calculation. She's not saying, well, this will cement my future relationship with Ozzy. I can point to this moment and say, I tried to tell you. She just starts to tell him.
no, I think she was exactly doing what you just said she wasn't doing.
Oh,
I think she tried to tell Christian that she wants to loop Ozzy in, and
okay.
Christian just shut it down. And from Christian's perspective, he was right. But from Emily's perspective, what is Ozzy going to do with that information?
Yeah.
He's close with Emily. He's probably not going to vote her out now that he knows that the vote has switched to her. The most he's going to do is try really hard to convince them to vote Angelina out instead of Mike at this phase. But I don't think that Christian or Emily would end up going home because they told Ozzy that they were planning on voting Mike.
I think my fear would be um, that I don't trust Ozzy not to tip the blind side to Mike, especially since he wants to be Mike's number one.
Yeah,
You know,
but then what? Mike plays his shot in the dark?
then
Ozzy plays his idol on Mike? Like, I
then
kind of don't think so.
then Ozzy votes with Angelina and Mike, and you've
For
got
Emily, I also don't think he's going to do that because I think he's working with Emily. I don't think he's working with Mike more than he's working with Emily.
yeah, that's a good point. I don't know
So,
exactly what the fear. It would be messy.
yeah,
It's
and that's why Christian didn't want to do it. But for Emily, she
yeah,
doesn't mind a little mess,
that's true.
and it's worth it to be able to convince Ozzy that she's on his side. And
Okay,
even if what happened in the episode happens, Ozzy's going to go back to camp a lot angrier with Christian than with Emily, who will probably at some point tell him, I tried to tell you this, but Christian didn't want me to. And she
yeah,
can point to that moment where she tried to tell him that.
yeah,
Like, I think that she actually, it looked messy, but I think it was just that Christian was being stubborn and wouldn't hear her, and she wanted to be close with Ozzy going into the next vote.
right. Just because Christian assumes that this is the way to do it doesn't mean it's always the right way for her to do it, which he should remember and reflect upon with Gabby too.
Yeah, and I think that Christian thought that it was the rational thing for Emily to stick with keeping things not messy because Emily's name was the one that was on the line, not Christian's. So he was like, this is good for both of us in his
Right.
head. But Christian's very anti mess, and Emily is a little more pro mess. And I think he wasn't totally accounting for that.
Emily is a much more chaotic player, I guess, this season than I remembered
Yeah.
her being her last season. It's taken me aback a little bit, but when I see it through that lens, you're right. There is a method to that chaos, and it may seem messy and not the product of careful thought, and maybe it's all instinct anyway, but
Yeah,
her instincts are good
I
in that
think
way.
so. And maybe I'm wrong, and she's just causing chaos for chaos's sake, or she doesn't even realize she's doing it. But
Yeah, we'll
I
see.
think it was. a clear logic behind why she would have done what she did.
I appreciate the fact that she doesn't. She's not holding to an alliance just because she's in an alliance. You know, like we're all, oh, Devon's, Christian, Emily is the perfect alliance because they're all three nerds that we enjoy. But she's not seeing it that way, you know, like
I mean,
she's
and I think she's sticking with the alliance. I think she's just trying to get her voice heard more than
right.
anyone else's.
Right. Well, yeah, and not for nothing, but Christian does tend to kind of dominate the decision making, um,
Yeah.
and his responses when you don't follow his plan. You know, he's trying to be. He's pretty frustrated. You
Yeah, and
know.
look, what I see in Christian is something that I see in myself sometimes, which is like he is right and he knows he's right and he's
Yeah.
convinced he's right, and so he just does not understand why anyone would not listen to him.
Yeah.
And he's pushing his perspective because he's so sure it's right.
Yeah.
Um, and that's fair, but I do think he maybe would benefit from taking a backseat on like one of these votes or
Sure.
like one of these decisions. And maybe it's just that they're all pretty urgent decisions. Because maybe Ozzy would have blown up their plan, and maybe Ozzy would have played his idol for Mike and
Mm.
sent Angelina or Emily home. Emily would have gone home if he had played the idol for Mike in that case. So I don't know.
Well, this was a big blindside, a very necessary blindside. It came early. Where do you see Christian and Emily and Ozzy's games going from here?
I don't know. And we know that there's going to be a double elimination next episode, right?
Right.
Which to me says this tribe is almost definitely going to tribal council again because
Yeah.
they are not very good at challenges. So it
Right.
seems like they're definitely going to have to get through one more vote. And I don't know what comes next. It seems possible that Ozzy being angry at them will be a smokescreen over what ends up being a pretty boring vote to get rid of Stephanie or Angelina. Um,
Yeah.
but it's possible that the three of them will break down. It's possible Ozzy will end up playing an idol. Like, there are a lot of things that could happen that would be crazy and upsetting because at this point, I don't want to see any of them go. And
Yeah.
they all are getting a huge portion of the edit, which
Yeah.
could be because we're gearing up for this climactic one of them going home, or it could be because they'll all be pretty central to the show post merge. But
Mhm.
I don't know what's going to happen.
I will say that I know that Angelina and Stephanie aren't getting as much of the edit, which suggests something to me, and it bothered me a little bit that Mike, in trying to save Angelina, just cast her as a number,
I
and
know.
said point blank she's never going to win. You know, why vote her out? Which I'm sure he could explain to his friend as, you know, I just said that to keep you around longer in the game, but
I
it's the
know.
kind of thing I never would want somebody to say out loud about me. But
Yeah.
I will say that I've been enjoying Angelina's play this season more than I did her last season. And Stephanie is curiously kind of absent to me. You know, I think people tend to be treating her with a certain kind of reverence, especially for her first season. But they're not including her in a lot of strategic talk, or the edit doesn't suggest that she's central to a lot of strategizing.
I think that they edited this too early for the edit to be affected by the response to Stephanie recently, like her
Right.
saying pretty hateful and bad things.
Right.
So, one thought I would have is that maybe they're reducing her role in the edit because of all the hateful stuff she said, but I actually don't think the timeline would work for that. So, I think she maybe just wasn't that involved in these decisions or these votes.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think she was probably closer to Colby, so they had more strategic conversations. And now that they're split up,
Yeah, I mean, I do think she's in sort of a desperate I'll do anything position, and
yeah.
that's like what the edit is showing.
It's so interesting to me how people seem to cede power, you know, like give it away. And some people just, like Mike White. Who made Mike White the puppet master? You know, I guess
I
Mike
mean, he
did.
failed.
I know, which is nice. I like that.
Yeah.
How come people are giving all of this authority to Christian in these matters, you know? I'm sure Ozzy's pissed about it, actually. Like
Yeah,
that's the thing that gets
probably.
Ozzy the most.
No, but I mean, I think that Ozzy is thinking strategically this
Yes.
game.
I,
And I think it's true that sometimes you should cede power in Survivor. Like
yeah,
sometimes you are going to be voted out if you make too much noise, but if you
yeah,
sit back, someone else will make noise and it'll get
yeah.
distracting. So like maybe that was the best decision for Stephanie here. And
Uh,
maybe Ozzy having less power pre-merge is going to help him a lot post-merge because he's still going to have his idol and he's still going to have his social capital, and no one will be seeing him as a big threat in the context of this season.
yeah, yeah, I think you're right. I think Genevieve is trying to grab too much, to steer the narrative too hard, too early when she's going
Maybe.
after Aubry, especially
I'm.
now that she's gotten the advantages. And everybody must know that Aubrey's got an idol. So
I
uh,
know. I am so interested to see how the boomerang idols play out. Like, I love the idea of this sort of delayed gratification power in the game.
yeah,
Because, like, the power in the game so much typically sits with, like, who has the advantages in the moment. The thought of, like, someone who could have an advantage in the future is, I think, really interesting.
Devins is ceding power in that tribe right now.
Yeah.
He seems to clearly be taking a step back and letting Rizzo's and Charlie's, sort of dominate. Maybe that's just the edit, but
Might just be the edit, but we'll
uh,
see.
I don't know. I think Devins knows when to lay low. So
Well, we'll see someone new go to tribal council next week, and that'll
that'll
be
be
fun.
that'll be fun.
All right.
All right.
Well, thank you to however many people are listening and watching. We hope you'll join us again next week. Thank you, Dad, for joining me again. I am excited to keep watching Survivor 50. I hope there are way fewer minutes dedicated to Zac Brown in the coming episodes.
Poor Zac Brown.
Sorry, Zac Brown. I liked your speech.